So, how does the man who invented one of the world's most powerful explosives end up as the symbol for the world's most famous Peace Prize? It's a heck of a paradox, right? And it's at the core of one of the most fascinating stories in modern history. Let's dig into how the Merchant of Death became a champion for peace. Okay, just imagine for a second. You wake up, grab your morning coffee, open the newspaper, and you read your own obituary. That is literally what happened to Alfred Nobel. And the headline, well, it wasn't just a mistake. It was a knockout punch summarizing a life he absolutely did not want to be remembered for. So how do you get from a legacy of, well, blowing things up, to a legacy of peace and human achievement? The story is just wild. It's got personal tragedy, a shocking journalistic error, and a last-ditch effort to completely rewrite history. To really get a handle on this paradox, first we need to understand the man himself and, of course, the invention that saddled him with that awful nickname. You know, we think of Alfred Nobel as the Dynamite guy, but he was so much more than that. The man was a genius, a total powerhouse inventor and businessman. And get this, by the time he was 17, he was already fluent in 5 languages. Believe it or not, his real passions were literature and poetry, which drove his engineer father absolutely crazy. Now, here's something that's absolutely crucial to this whole story. Nobel's most famous invention, it wasn't actually made to cause destruction. It was made to prevent it. He was trying to solve a very, very deadly problem. See, before dynamite, the only game in town was nitroglycerin. And this stuff, it was a complete nightmare. It was incredibly powerful, sure, but it was an oily, toxic liquid that could just go off if you looked at it wrong. A jolt, a change in temperature, boom. Even the guy who invented it was horrified, saying it was way too dangerous for anyone to ever use. And for Nobel, this wasn't some abstract scientific challenge. This was deeply, deeply personal. He and his father were working with nitroglycerin when a massive explosion at their factory in Stockholm killed 5 people. One of them was Alfred's 20-year-old brother, Emil. But that tragedy didn't stop him. No, it lit a fire under him. It became his obsession to make this stuff safe. His breakthrough was just brilliant. After tons of experiments, Nobel figured out that if you mix the liquid nitroglycerin with this absorbent, sandy earth, it turned into a stable paste, kind of like a dangerous Play-Doh. He could shape it, ship it, and most importantly, control exactly when it went off. He called his new invention Dynamite. And dynamite completely changed the world. All of a sudden, tasks that were nearly impossible, like blasting tunnels through solid mountains or carving out massive canals, became way faster and safer. In Nobel's mind, this was dynamite's real purpose. It was a tool for building civilization, not for tearing it down. But the world also saw its other potential, its destructive side. And that brings us to the moment that really forced Nobel to look his own public image right in the face. Okay, so fast forward to 1888. Alfred's other brother, Ludwig, passes away in France. Now, Ludwig was a pretty big deal himself, a brilliant industrialist, but a French newspaper was about to make a massive, massive mistake.
Yup, they got the brothers mixed up. So instead of printing an obituary for Ludwig, they printed one for Alfred. It gave Nobel this bizarre, chilling experience of reading about his own death and seeing exactly what the world thought of him.
And this is what he read. Not inventor, not visionary, not poet, the Merchant of Death. The story goes that Nobel was absolutely horrified that this, a man who got rich from death, was going to be his only legacy. And it's that moment that's believed to have cemented his plan to change the entire narrative.
But here's the thing, this didn't happen in a vacuum. His conscience was already being poked and prodded by a really powerful voice for peace in his life, long before that mistaken obituary ever saw the light of day.
This is Countess Bertha von Suttner. She actually worked for Nobel as his secretary for a very short time, but they hit it off and became lifelong friends, writing letters back and forth to each other for decades. Now, von Suttner went on to become a huge leader in the peace movement. She even wrote a famous anti-war novel. And in her letters, she would constantly challenge Nobel, asking him about the military uses of his inventions and really pushing him to use his money and influence for her cause. And Nobel's response to her is just fascinating. He had this complex, maybe even naive idea. He basically said, hey, Maybe my factories will make weapons so terrifyingly destructive that they'll end war faster than any peace conference. It was this bizarre idea of creating peace through the threat of absolute annihilation. So you've got this perfect storm, right? The phrase merchant of death is bouncing around in his head, and his friend's arguments for peace are in his letters. Nobel decided it was time to create one final secret invention, a brand new legacy. About a year before he actually died, he sat down and drafted a plan that would shock absolutely everyone. It was a single document that was going to redefine the name Nobel forever. When that will was finally opened, people's jaws just hit the floor. Nobel left almost his entire gigantic fortune, over 31 million Swedish kroner, which would be like billions in today's money, to set up a series of prizes. And just look at the categories he chose. It tells you everything about his true passions. Not just the sciences, but also literature, his first love, and of course the big one, peace. The whole point was to reward people who had given the greatest benefit on humankind. And get this, just listen to the specific language he used for the Peace Prize. It sounds like it could have been lifted straight from one of his letters with Bertha von Suttner. He wasn't just vaguely funding peace, he was funding the exact goals of the peace movement he had debated for so long. And then, in what has to be the most perfect ending to this story you could possibly imagine, 9 years after Alfred Nobel's death, the Nobel Peace Prize was awarded to the very woman who helped inspire it all, his friend, his challenger, Bertha von Suttner. So in the end, Alfred Nobel did something almost no one ever gets to do. He got a sneak peek at his own legacy, and he got a second chance to rewrite it from the ground up. It leaves us with this incredible question, right? When you look back on a life, what really matters more? The work you did to build a fortune, or the final act that gave it all away?